This is the reason your home feels small, and it has nothing to do with square footage. Most people think a dark room is the result of small windows or bad luck with compass orientation. But in early 2026, designers know that 80% of the problem is actually layout physics. Light behaves like water as it flows and splashes, but it gets dammed up by physical obstacles you probably placed there yourself. We are going to fix 6 specific layout errors that absorb lumens before they ever reach your eyes.
What that does is allow the space to be a bit more spirited.
We start with the most common instinct that kills natural light, which is the perimeter trap. You push your sofa, bookcases, and chairs against the walls to open up the center of the room. Although this feels logical because it creates space, physically, this layout creates what architects call a dead zone for illumination. Light enters through your windows and naturally fades as it travels deeper into the room. When you line heavy furniture along the perimeter, you create a tunnel that traps shadows in the corners. The center of the room becomes a vast, empty stage that light passes over without interaction, while the edges, where the light should be bouncing, are blocked by solid mass. The result is a room that feels like a long, narrow bowling alley that is dim at the edges. The fix requires the counterintuitive move of floating your furniture. By pulling your sofa even 6 inches away from the wall, or centering your seating arrangement, you create a circulation path behind the furniture. This does something important for the physics of light, because it allows daylight to wash down the walls and wrap around your furniture pieces, rather than hitting a dead end. In 2026, we are seeing a big shift toward island layouts, where the walls are left bare to act as reflectors. When light hits a bare wall, it bounces back into the room, but when it hits a dark velvet sofa back pressed against that plaster, it dies. You should pull the furniture out to let the room breathe. The shadows vanish instantly because light can finally circulate. Mistake number 2 is a geometry error. Placing tall furniture like bookcases, armoires, or high-back chairs adjacent to a window is almost as bad as placing them in front of it. Light enters in a cone shape rather than a straight line, dispersing wider as it travels. When you place a tall cabinet within 2 feet of a window frame, you are physically cutting off the peripheral spread of that light cone. You might think it is fine because it isn't blocking the glass, but you are incorrect. You are creating a deep contrast shadow immediately next to the light source. This high contrast triggers your eyes to constrict, making the rest of the room appear much darker by comparison. It is an optical illusion that ruins the feel of the space. We are breaking down 4 more layout errors that might be costing you sunlight. If you want to understand your home's design potential, follow our channel for detailed reviews like this every single week. We can now look at the math behind light penetration. Architects use a specific formula called the 2.5x rule that you should memorize. Usable daylight penetrates into a room a distance of 2.5 times the height of the window head. If your window top is 8 feet high, effective light reaches about 20 feet deep. However, that formula assumes 0 obstruction. If you place a heavy object within the entry zone of the first 3 feet inside the window, you cut that 20-foot throw in half. To fix this, visualize a 45-degree angle coming from your window jambs into the room. Keep that triangle completely clear of anything taller than a coffee table. This preserves the throw of the light, ensuring it reaches the back corners of your space. We often talk about color, but we rarely talk about finish, which brings us to the matte trap. In the last few years, ultra matte and flat paints became very trendy for their velvety and sophisticated look. However, a flat finish is a disaster in a low-light room. Flat paint has a rough microscopic texture that scatters and absorbs light rather than reflecting it. If you have a dim north-facing room and you paint the walls matte navy, you are basically creating a black hole. Physics dictates that light needs a smooth surface to bounce. A surface with 0 sheen absorbs up to 15% more lumens than a surface with a slight satin or eggshell finish. You are paying for electricity to light a room that refuses to hold on to it. The metric you need to check is Light Reflectance Value, or LRV. It is a number from 0 to 100 found on the back of almost every paint swatch. In 2026, the trend for universal khaki and earthy tones is very popular, but if your room lacks windows, you cannot afford an LRV below 50. A value of 50 means the color absorbs half the light that hits it. For dark hallways or windowless powder rooms, you need an LRV of 65 or higher to simulate brightness. Most importantly, swap that matte finish for a pearl or satin sheen. This doesn't mean your walls need to look wet or shiny, but it means they become active participants in lighting the room by bouncing photons back toward your eyes. Your brain estimates the brightness of a room based on how much floor it can see. This brings us to mistake number 4, which is visual gravity. Using furniture with solid bases, such as sofas with skirts, chunky boxy armchairs, or solid wood coffee tables, blocks the light from skimming across the floor. When light hits a solid sofa base, it stops dead. The shadow cast is absolute. In a room that is already struggling for brightness, filling the floor plane with heavy, blocky shapes makes the volume of the space feel compressed and suffocating. It grounds the room too much by creating a psychological sensation of heaviness that reads as darkness to the human eye. The antidote is what designers call leggy furniture. You want pieces that sit up on tapered legs to allow you to see the floor continuing underneath them. This allows light to pass under the sofa and reflect off the rug or floorboards, basically doubling the illuminated footprint of the room. We are also seeing a resurgence of acrylic and glass tables in 2026 for this exact reason. A glass coffee table takes up zero visual space and allows 100% of the light to pass through it. If you have a dark corner, avoid putting a solid oak cabinet there and instead use a chair with an open metal frame. The difference in perceived lumen output is noticeable. Mistake number 5 is segmentation. We often place bookcases, folding screens, or solid doors between rooms to define spaces, especially in open concept homes. However, if the south-facing room has all the light and you block it from the north-facing hallway with a solid barrier, you are starving the rest of your house. Light should be treated as a fluid resource that needs to be shared. A solid bookshelf acting as a room divider is a dam that hoards the light on one side. The layout mistake here is viewing each room as a sealed container rather than part of a larger system of light flow. The 2026 solution relies on transparency. Instead of a solid wall or bookcase, use open shelving where light can filter through the gaps between books. You should also look at the biomorphic trend in interior design, involving organic, curved glass partitions and internal windows. Installing a transom window above an internal door or swapping a solid door for a French door with glass panes can borrow up to 400 lumens from a bright room and transfer them to a dark corridor. You aren't generating new light, but you are simply allowing the existing abundance to flow where it is needed. You should always ask if you can see through a divider, because if the answer is no, you are blocking energy. Finally, we have the most egregious error of all, which is relying on a single overhead light source. This is the interrogation room effect. When you have one central pendant light or a grid of recessed cans, you create harsh downlighting that casts deep vertical shadows on everything, including your face. It flattens the room so that the corners remain dark while the center is overexposed. This isn't just ugly, but functionally dark, because the vertical surfaces of the walls are not being illuminated. If your walls are dark, the room feels dark, no matter how bright the bulb in the center is. A single source creates a cave-like atmosphere where the perimeter falls into gloom. You need to build 3 layers of light to hit the target of roughly 150 lux for a living space. The first layer is ambient, but the second and third layers of task and accent are important. In 2026, we are moving away from stiff lamps toward napkin lights that use draped, fluid forms to diffuse light softly. Place these sources at different heights. A floor lamp illuminates the ceiling, while a table lamp illuminates the middle ground, and low-level accent lights can wash the floor. By lighting the vertical walls and the corners specifically, you push the boundaries of the room outward. The room physically feels larger and brighter because your eye is drawn to the illuminated edges instead of just the center. One final layout adjustment involves your decor placement. Mirrors are the obvious tool, but most people hang them incorrectly by placing a mirror on a dark wall, reflecting another dark wall. To multiply light, a mirror must be positioned opposite or adjacent to a light source. You should go further with this concept. In 2026, high-gloss ceramics and metallic finishes are replacing matte pottery. Placing a glossy ceramic vase on a coffee table or a metallic sculpture on a shelf acts as a micro-reflector. These thousands of tiny specular highlights add a sparkle that matte rooms lack. It is about the hundreds of small surfaces catching and redirecting energy rather than just the big windows. Light is not just something you receive, but something you manage. By floating your furniture, clearing the window angles, choosing the right LRV, and layering your illumination, you stop fighting the physics of your home and start working with them. You don't need a renovation to banish the gloom, because you just need a better layout. If you found these layout fixes helpful, you will love our detailed look into color theory coming up next, so make sure you are subscribed to catch that. Until then, go move that sofa away from the wall.